Breaking news. The uprising led by Prigozhin demonstrates the weakness of Putin's regime. Some military takeovers are presented as pioneering changes and innovations. Some, like Chile's in 1973 and Spain's abortive attempt in 1981, are inspired by longing for previous dictatorship. Powerful group grievances are a primary or contributing factor in the majority of coups. The failed coup attempt by Russian warlord Yevgeny Prigozhin appears to have been driven solely by Prigozhin's ego, however. The Wagner Group mercenaries led by Prigozhin quickly gave up their march on Moscow, but not before revealing the rot at the heart of Russian President Vladimir Putin's Praetorian regime. As a result, Prigozhin showed that he is not so much a threat to Putin's rule as he is a sign of the weakness of that rule. The Russian president described him as having exorbitant ambition and personal interest, but he remains a Putin loyalist. Prigozhin's rising power was a threat to Putin's control of the country's attention, so he had to be checked. Prigozhin, who co-founded the private militia in 2014, stood to lose a substantial amount of money due to Putin's plan to place Wagner under the direct command of the Ministry of Defense. Prigozhin's catering company reportedly made $920 million annually supplying food to the military, in addition to 80 billion rubles. After the uprising was put down, Putin said he hoped nobody stole anything, or at least did not steal much, a thinly veiled dig at Prigozhin's business dealings. The privatization of national sovereignty is a hallmark of Putin's rule. Additional mercenary forces have been formed in response to the conflict in Ukraine, and private armies like Wagner, which received $1 billion annually from the state's budget, have been an integral part of the Putin system. Gazprom, a state-owned gas monopoly, has even formed its own private battalion, sending security guards to Ukraine to fight in exchange for better working conditions at home. Putin can satisfy the military's manpower needs with these paramilitary units instead of ordering yet another mobilization, which would be politically disastrous. Hundreds of thousands of Russian males left the country when the previous conscription drive began in late 2022. As a result, the Ukraine conflict has spawned a proliferation of private military firms. Prigozhin's rivalry with the top brass of the Russian armed forces, including Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov, was only intensified by this new challenge. Russia's military is in charge of the conflict, but warlords like Prigozhin and Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov have risen to power because of their connections to Putin. Putin has little to celebrate despite the fact that there are no serious challenges to his rule. The humiliation of needing Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko's mediation to end Prigozhin's rebellion is the lowest point of Prigozhin's long rule. Putin has been privatizing government agencies for over 2 decades, enriching a small group of politically loyal elites to the tune of billions. The open challenge to his authority shows that this tactic was doomed to failure from the start. The public's idealized view of the Russian military as a heroic force united against a common enemy has probably been shattered by Prigozhin's rebellion, which Putin himself says brought the country to the brink of a civil war. Putin's reputation as an all-powerful czar has also taken a significant hit, with his fate now dependent on the success of his generals in Ukraine. The fact that Prigozhin's mercenaries were able to take over major cities and military headquarters with little to no resistance only confirmed what many had suspected all along: that the Russian Empire is a bloated, inefficient mess, with vast territories inhabited by hundreds of ethnic groups, some of which are self-governed. Its size, while inspiring national pride, also makes it susceptible to natural disasters. Putin can't seem to change the inevitable, that all empires eventually fall. His grandiose fantasies of imperial grandeur and his lament for the blow that struck Russia in 1917 may have fooled the Russian people, but his regime is based on shaky alliances between deeply corrupt civilian and military elites. Some of this corruption dates back to the Soviet era, but Putin has made it worse by building up his own system of patronage and graft. Despite Russia's spectacular military ineptitude in Ukraine and its internal political instability, Neither the battlefield dynamics nor the broader geopolitical equilibrium are likely to change. Putin continues to be on the outside looking in, but he still has his allies in China and Iran and can use India's neutral stance on the war to his advantage. His oil deal with Saudi Arabia has not been broken. The already low morale of the Russian army has been severely impacted by recent events. Russia's war effort is not necessarily doomed, despite the fact that the head of Russia's Parliamentary Defense Committee called Wagner's demise a gift to NATO and Ukraine. After all, Putin still commands the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet. Furthermore, Putin and his inner circle are not likely to admit defeat because they view the conflict in Ukraine as a fight for their very survival. Putin has transformed into a near-suicidal advocate of anti-Western revanchism, abandoning his former persona as a shrewd diplomat attempting to reconcile Russia's ambitions with Western sensibilities. Russia will not emerge victorious from this conflict. The political instability of the country has been exposed by Prigozhin's actions, and the potential dire consequences of a Russian defeat have been highlighted. Russia's 11 time zones would be profoundly affected by a power vacuum in the Russian capital. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine has now lasted for 16 months, and the situation on the ground has become reminiscent of the frozen, deadlocked fronts of World War I when the Ukrainian counteroffensive has run its course. Hopefully both sides can sit down and negotiate a ceasefire. But as things stand, it looks like the conflict will become another drawn-out border dispute, the resolution of which will require major political shifts. Such changes, if they occur, would be just as shocking as Prigozhin's weekend mutiny.